by process of elimination. Well, welcome everybody to what episode of Shop Talk is this? I don't know. Are we keeping track? We should probably do some of that administration. That's on you, Sam. Episode 12-ish of Shop Talk. You know, we're back to our monthly routine. Today, a little bit of catch up with our usual updates, and then we're going to talk about credentialing. More on that in a minute, and we'll introduce our guests then. So what are our updates? Well, I'll give a CSCA update first, the Canadian Strength Conditioning Association. I'm the chair of the education committee, I guess, and I've been on the advisory panel for a while. We have an annual general meeting coming up November 29th. If you're on the advisory committee or you're one of the directors, you've received your invitation. There's an agenda that's out. Now, here's the thing. Not all of you were invited. And that's pretty mean because I want to invite everybody. But we had to figure out who do we have there, who do we not. We're going to be doing all kinds of voting for motions, voting for new directors. And there's some way we had to do crowd control because up to this point, we only have subscribers, not true paid members, right? So it's a new thing. So we can't just open it up and let everybody in and everybody tell them to invite their friends so their friends can vote for whoever they feel like voting for. So we stuck to the advisory panel, except if you're on the advisory panel, you can invite some people in. So if you want to come on this wonderful annual general meeting, I'm sure it'll be just stunningly exciting. Text one of your favorite advisory panel members, which half the people on this call or more are part of the advisory panel, and say, hey, I want to get involved, and we'll get you on the list. Basically, we just want to make sure that people coming in are actually involved in the industry, not just someone's buddies from the CrossFit down the road. In the general meeting, we'll be approving our new written bylaws. We'll have reports from each of the different subcommittees. We'll set out terms of reference for the subcommittees. We're going to do voting for the directors. We have up to 7 directors going. Sam, you going to run?
My name's in.
Your name's in. All right, I put my name in. Ontario represents.
Let's see if we can battle it out, Trev. Let's see.
You versus me, Sam. Let's see who could out. And then we'll be done with new business. So it's a chance for people to bring new motions to the floor. The event is being opened by Scott Livingston with a little chat and then closed by Ed McNeely. And so we'll have a few little special presenters there giving us their rants of the day. So that is the CSCA update as the latest. If you haven't got the last fall newsletter, go check it out. There's actually a pretty good cohort of articles there. Lots of good articles coming in. We're gaining some good momentum here. Jordan, on you, NSCA, we'll let you represent NSCA. I guess we're going to talk about NSCA a bit more in a bit. I don't think there's much going on there.
Nothing new from those guys. I did reach out to get them on this call about credentialing and did not get a response. Also went through kind of our provincial NSCA representation to try to get that as well and didn't get a response. So hopefully maybe at a later date, they might reach out and we can gain some more information. What we're looking to is to get some more about that performance and sports science certification and how that would be of additional value to the credentialing for Canadian strength and conditioning coaches specifically. Other than that, nothing. Like always, we're kind of reminding people because most people end up forgetting this year's a research year if you're a CSCS. So try to get that stuff in. I think they offer some discounts and stuff if you get it done early too. So that's it from the NSCA.
Yeah, speaking of that, does everybody have their CPR first aid with COVID shut down? Remember, you got to have that renewed as part of your CSCS renewal. Everybody got that? Or does anybody have any tips for anybody looking for an easy way to do a recert? Throw it up on the chat if you could, because I know some people have reached out about that. All right, Sam, U Sport and provincial guidelines. Tell us about the red, orange, green, yellow, purple, or gray. It's gray, I guess, right?
Yeah, to say that it's anxiety inducing is saying it lightly. There is a lot of change going on, especially in the province of Ontario, I would say. And some of our athletes in particular here at York are kind of laughing at us because in their home provinces, they've been dealing with this green, yellow, orange, purple metric for quite some time. So it's definitely confusing. It leaves a lot open to interpretation, especially across, I would say, U Sport facilities. And those that are on the call or are listening in that run any sort of the high performance spaces at other universities, you can acknowledge the email chain that we've had back and forth to try and determine what is what, because the restrictions definitely aren't clear. And we're definitely getting the hit of that here at York in terms of what decisions are being made. So we live every day wondering if the government is going to shut us completely down from lockdown, or if we're in red B, yellow C, a mixture of all of it. So it's definitely hasn't, I would say, reduced the anxiety or the level of confusion that it was supposed to. There's definitely a lot, because you go region to region, you can go from one to the other and it's in a different color, right? So it's been a bit difficult, I would say, across U Sport for people to be making decisions, and then especially here in Ontario and specifically in Toronto across the multiple universities that span through that region of Toronto specifically. It's pretty difficult. So we trek on, adapting every day, but I will say that the competitions are still canceled for the winter. There still hasn't been a decision made on some of the regions, so we're still waiting to hear on a couple of those. And as I said before, they've put it up to each university individually if they want to start doing pods or training together. And I imagine that from a Toronto region, that's probably out for us, given the fact that we're looks like our numbers continue to spiral upwards and the predictions are pretty aggressive. So I don't imagine that we'll be out of this too much sooner. So that's all I got.
Have you heard of any other programs being shut down? Like universities, like being completely like, that's it, we're pulling the plug, firing, laying off, furloughs?
No, since our last update, things have maintained status quo in terms of employment, although I haven't heard anything in particular. So I'm imagining the status quo is means that everyone's doing okay, but most places are actually opening slowly, maintaining with some of the restrictions that we had previously. So I haven't heard of anything in particular.
And so how close do you think you guys are on figuring out what orange, red, yellow, gray means? Any closer? Is there like a subcommittee of OUA or anything? No.
No, there's a bit of a discussion within the OUA head S&C coaches and director of sport performance. But the confusion is it really depends on how each university, their emergency committee decides how they interpret those restrictions as well. So it's really, we can make a decision as an OUA in terms of how we feel comfortable with some of the interpretation of some of those restrictions, but the decision really is university specific, and their university central has to make that decision based on how their emergency committee feels comfortable.
So if anybody else has any updates in their areas, so I know some of you are private, some of you are college, some of you are university, you're all over the place. We know a lot of familiar names. Any other updates from any of you regarding how things are working with COVID rules, etc.?
Yeah,
FYI, who's this?
It's Colin from Queens here.
Yeah, what's up there?
Yeah, we're still just moving on. I mean, we're lucky we're not in the GTA or in the Greater Ottawa region either. So we've just been moving on with pods still, and we're back to practices. But we kind of have to take a slow, incremental approach, and we've been pretty safe, thankfully. But our city only has like 16 cases right now, so we're pretty minimal. But all in all, things have trekked forward. We're still at reduced workload, but we're training 4 days a week or coaching 4 days a week. Each athlete's training twice per week, and now we're just trying to prep as to what January looks like, because some universities are going to require, sounds like, mandatory quarantines for when the students travel back to campus for a few weeks before we can start anything. So just waiting to see what that all looks like.
Thanks, Colin. Anyone else? Oh, good. I just FYI, I hosted an Olympic weightlifting meet last weekend. It was the first Olympic weightlifting competition in Ontario since the shutdown. Ontario Powerlifting Association has canceled all their meets, so there haven't been any powerlifting meets. Weightlifting is eager to get going because it's an Olympic year, of course, if assuming the Olympics happen. So they have to get people qualified and get all the carding and the ranking and all that figured out. So there's a big push to get. So ours was the first meet back. and we ran it under full COVID rules. Every warm-up, every participant had their own warm-up platform and warm-up set. We had to wipe down the bar between every attempt. Obviously, everybody in masks except for the competitors, and it went off pretty well. It was pretty spaced out. We had a bit of spectators, not a lot, and it looks like it's viable. No one's gotten sick yet, so cross our fingers. Now, I'm sure in the popular press, I'm sure someone would be disappointed that we're hosting these things, but life's going on a little bit, so I appreciate that. Anyway, so the provincial championships for weightlifting was supposed to be December 5th and 6th in Toronto, but they've now moved it out here to Guelph where I am. So at the same venue, I'm going to host those under the same format just because we've figured it out in that setting. So Nikki, you have an update. What did you say?
Yeah, so just, I guess sort of speaking on behalf of U of T, I know downtown they've been doing in-person stuff, and I do a lot of work with the fitness side as well, though I do the conditioning for badminton. And so we offered kind of once a day a different either like rec program, either fitness, and Darren, who I don't see on the call, has actually run a couple of just conditioning sessions. So we have kind of our specific COVID protocol that we all follow, and uptake hasn't been huge, so but nobody's gotten sick. This is like our fourth week. I think we're only going to run the next following week, and that'll be our last.
I imagine it's got to be tough at UTM given that majority of people don't live there, right? It's a pretty commuter space, so I imagine that's difficult with uptake for you guys to get people out.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think Darren, that he's the one that did more of the conditioning stuff. He actually had, I think he had maybe like 8 people one day, which is good for us, whereas some of the other programming might have only had like 5 or 6 participants. So it's low. We do some students and residents, I think about 500, but yeah, it's definitely a commuter school. So that's one issue.
Good. And then Jordan, you did your survey. You happy with it?
Yeah, so quick, I didn't put this in the agenda, but more so thanks, because a lot of people on the call were of benefit to reach out to their networks and fill it out themselves and all that kind of thing. So I ended up getting, with my survey characteristics of strength and conditioning coaches in Canada, over 200 replies, which I was pretty happy with. Haven't had much time to do anything with it as a result of work tempo at the moment, but we'll dig through that in December and hopefully have something out. Fairly interesting, I would say, just from some of the stuff that I've glanced at, and just shows how immature we are as a profession in Canada. At the moment, there was just such a wide range of the like job titles, responsibilities, and salaries that I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, to be honest, because of how mind-blowing it is. You know, people with director job titles that are making $20,000, and other people with director making over $100,000 with similar responsibilities. Obviously means that what's out there in the public sector as far as information about what we do and what's required and all that kind of thing, there's a little bit of mud in the water for sure. So like I said, it'll take me a while to dig through it, but that's just like one example of how we are just truly different from what popped out from those 2 studies that I kind of emulated in the US. Another thing that I think is hilarious and of note, for those of you that I have on Facebook, when I posted the Kermit meme, got me like an additional 25 responses. So that was pretty sweet, albeit maybe a bit tacky, but yeah, 25 responses. So thanks.
That was
thanks
brilliant.
to everybody
That was brilliant, Jordan.
Yeah, it was good.
It was funny online. Sam and I were going, really, Jordan, really? And then he came back, well, I got me 20 more. All right.
That's the first meme.
Gotta give people what they want.
I might put it as my profile picture, but anyways, so thanks to everybody.
Well, 200,
and, hopefully
200 respondents on what do you have, like 30 questions in there. I hope you have an advisor who has some skill in statistics, my friend. Do you know anybody who can help you with all that?
He said, "This is easy. This is easy stuff compared to the statistics that that a guy that I might know has helped me out with." That's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's gonna be a lot of numbers.
I'm involved in another. I'm of course involved with Jordan, but I'm involved with another guy in the UK, and he was doing a survey as well on eccentric strength training in youth, and he only got, of all the UK, he got 67 respondents. So what is their population? Twice of Canada's. They're 60 million, 70 million. So getting 200 respondents from the Canadian population of strength conditioning is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good turnout. Yeah, when you think of it, like even in that Facebook group, there's like 500 people. Within our Canadian Strength Conditioning Association, we're at about 500 as well. But a lot of these are just, they're young students and that kind of thing. So that's pretty, I'd say that represents more than half of the people who are actually working in the industry. What do you think?
Yeah, the distribution of responses was interesting. So I got obviously most of them when I first pushed it out. And then the next blip of over 20 was when the CSCA pushed out their newsletter, which was like 10 days later or something like that. And then in the last week, when I started badgering essentially people on Facebook, not officially, Dave, just, air quotes badgering.
Was that approved? Was that meme approved by the ethics committee? I don't know.
I did say that the primary investigator, was going to use social media and their professional network to get responses.
All right. It's all good then.
I did.
You never said anything about badgering, though.
Badgering. Not allowed.
Badgering. I got like another 20 on that first day of the week, and then the Kermit meme got me another 20, and that was kind of like the peaks that I got. But most of it was right off the bat from kind of like people like that are on the call and in the network and in your email list and stuff like that, Trev.
Awesome. All right, folks, any last chance for updates while I'm chit-chatting here? Throw it up there, put your hand up, something like that. But if we have no more exciting new news, let's talk about something that's on everybody's mind right now, because at the recent SPIN conference, the SPIN conference moved online this year. The CSI finally came forward with what they've been talking about doing for years, and now they have a new credential for strength conditioning specialists working within the NSO-CSI networks. And they described that credentialing. They've already run a few people through it. And at the same time, if you recall, 6 months ago, we had a discussion about the NSCA's new credential in sports scientist. And then probably about 10 months ago, if you're familiar with it, CSEP came out with their human performance specialist, high performance specialist credential that was kind of tied in with their already existing certified personal trainer and certified exercise physiologist credential. And that's on top of some of the credentials that already exist, which obviously the NSCA-CSCS credential is kind of like the base entry-level credential that we all love to hate. And then we have other more slightly uncommon credentials, such as a CSCA, which is actually a unique credential, but in Canada, it's not that prevalent. Nobody really hiring knows what that is. So now in the space of 1 year, we have 3 new credentials in strength conditioning, and to complicate things further, we now have a Canadian Strength and Conditioning Association, who you would think should have ownership over some of the credentialing in our industry, but obviously it's new, it doesn't. And there's a lot of other credentials out there. So does CSCA even have to think about this? I know we've had conversations and we've created surveys and a variety of other models for how we could credential, but I'm not sure if we should. I'm not sure if there's room for more of that in the market, especially when you think of the number of jobs in the field are somewhat limited, to say the least, right now. And so we're selling things to people that may not actually turn into any long-term careers in any sort of way. So we have a series of special guests here today. One is Kate. Kate, are you still there? Did we scare Kate away?
You didn't scare me away. I'm still here.
All right, Kate. So there's
Must
Kate.
be hiding in the corner of your screen.
So I reached out to CSEP, and CSEP has a new high performance specialist. It's trademarked, I see. You trademarked the high performance specialist name. All right, so we can't use that anymore. All right, write that off. And this has been talked about for a while, and it's my understanding, Kate, I'll let you give a little intro about who you are, what your background is, and a little bit of history. My understanding is a lot of the CSEP members were interested in the human performance side of things. They were looking for some value-added credentials that would allow them to work with athletes more. I've had people from CSEP for years tell me that CSEP is the gold standard for athlete training, which quite frankly, I think is not well-founded. Nonetheless, they have come out with a credential, and they've actually brought some people in who are involved with CSEP who have some background in this, and they've created an exam that allows you to test into a high-performance specialist role. So Kate, a little bit about yourself, your background, and then give us a sales pitch, your best pitch on the CSEP credential, and why everybody here should sign up for it.
Wow, sales pitch. Now you're putting me in the hot seat. Well, my name is Kate Andrews. So I'm in right now. I am the chair of the Professional Standards Program with CSEP. I've been involved with CSEP for a number of years. I'm also the chair of the Personal Fitness Trainer Program at NATE. I have my Master's in Human Movement with Exercise and Sports Psychology stream. I've been in the industry for, I know I look young, but it's been at least 20 years now. Yeah, it's been a really fun last 20 years, especially working with CSEP, developing new things. A couple years ago, we took a look at our certifications. We spent some time planning, so there's quite a few individuals on different committees that we brought together to look at the certification, what we're doing and how we might change them. And this is how the high performance specialist was born, because we did recognize that there was a lot of really good content already built into what at that time was the certified exercise physiologist, now the clinical exercise physiologist. We wanted to pull it out a little bit more and make it a little bit more accessible to more people. So we took a look. We got some really, really amazing people to work on the project and build great online modules, build some really good learning resources. And so now we have the high performance specialization. And it's been, we've had that now, we launched it in really this year.
Thanks, Kate. What kind of numbers have you had so far? Have you had a lot of uptake?
It started off not bad. With COVID, you know, it's hard to talk with numbers right now. We, you know, obviously, as most people, we spent the last 8 months just trying to figure out, you know, 6 to 8 months, how we're going to adapt to everything. So some of our communication that we would have put into promoting the high performance specialization, put a little bit more into what we're doing with the different restrictions with COVID, how we're going to do practical testing, because we're one of the only certifications that still does some practical testing. So we changed that up to be able to do it virtually and that type of thing. So that took a little bit of work. But we've been getting decent numbers. It's starting to pick up again now that people have kind of figured out a lot of individuals that have gone through and done their certified personal trainer, which if you do certified personal trainer, then you only have to challenge the exam for the high performance specialization. If you're not a CSEP member, then you have to go through and do the online modules. So we're starting to see more uptake for both.
And what's the cost of it?
Oh my gosh, now you're asking all the big questions. There's different price, and I'd have to look. I'm sorry, I didn't look at that. It's definitely a little bit cheaper to challenge the exam than it is to purchase the online module type of thing. If I recall correctly, when we developed it, and some things may have changed, I do believe it's $200. That would be to do all the modules, and like, I think it's 100 and something to challenge. I would definitely have to check that. It's not overly expensive.
Okay, thanks. This sounds a little bad on your end, so apologies. I might ask you to repeat it a couple times if there was a bit of a fuzz. Is that just me, or nod your head? You guys are getting it too? Yeah, might actually need you to call in on your phone. But so I'm going to just throw it all out there. Is CSEP High Performance Specialist a leading credential in Canada for people who want to work in strength conditioning, in your opinion?
Well, I would hope it's in my opinion. It is. Yeah, of course. I think that, like I said, we've worked with a lot of great researchers, of course, together. CSEP is very much evidence-based. All of the credentials out there are great. I think, everybody does a really good job. We're focused on the Canadian market. We're focused on, like I said, evidence-based. A lot around, especially with the high performance specialists, we wanted to bring more content to certified personal trainers, so those that have the 2 years and not just a degree. So yes, I think, to be honest, I think any people out there getting certifications is a win. That requires some type of formal education, that requires some due diligence on their part. In the fitness industry, a little bit of the Wild West. Like I said, I think getting any certification.
So now, one second, Dave, if I just finish up, I'm just going to finish up my train of thought, and then we're going to open it up to everybody, right? So CSEP is often advertised itself as a gold standard. They've encouraged things like universities and municipalities to look at CSEP credentialed individuals when hiring first, and a lot of municipalities do that, and universities. A person with this 70 multiple choice certification who has a fitness and health promotion diploma, do you feel that universities hiring lead strength conditioning coaches should require this in order to work in those institutions?
I mean, I think it's going to be dependent on the goals, the program.
Is CSEP pushing in that direction? Because I know in the past they've really pushed to say that they're the gold standard, that municipalities need to use the certification. It's the most important one. Do you think that's the direction you're trying to go with it?
Sure. I think that we do have a really good certification, specialization as well. Like I said, we work really hard to get the best people in Canada together to put the best material into our certifications and specialization. In saying that, it's going to be like anything, client-centered, right? The goals of the programs in the universities has to align with it. Yeah, we're luckily to have a good base in the colleges and universities, and that is something that we want to maintain.
Great. So there we go. So now we know CSEP's approach a little bit, and a little bit about what they're trying to get out of the certification. So Dave, you wanted to take the floor?
Sorry, can I just say something for a sec, Trevor? I know Adam put up the prices there. That's awesome. Thank you, Adam. That is just a one-time.
Dave?
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kate. So I was just going to say, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, I was the chair of the PFLC committee, if you remember that acronym. So the professional lifestyle consultant. And back then, our go-to term was we were aiming at the apparently healthy. And I think it's great that, because I always thought a big gap in CSEP was the greater than apparently healthy, the actually trained individuals. And so it's great to see that we've got something for high performance now. I was just going to ask, this certification, is it well balanced between strength, power, aerobic training, anaerobic training, or is there more of a emphasis on one aspect or another, like aerobic, anaerobic versus strength and power?
No, and hi, David. It's kind of an honor to be on this call. I know you've done a lot of work for CSEP in the past, so that's great. No, there's a little bit of everything. So the focus, we have the biomechanics, physiology, psychology. We do focus not just on sport, but occupational performance as well. That is something that we really wanted to make sure was in there, because we know that a lot of our members are working with what we would call our occupational athletes. We go through different assessments that would be more suited for sport performance or occupational performance, exercise design, that type of thing. Don't weigh heavy on one thing. Try to capture it all to give individuals a good
So Chris, you wanted to hop on? No? Oh, you're just talking about money. So anybody else, any other questions about the CSEP credential?
Yeah,
Jordan?
Kate, I have a quick question. Is there a possibility that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that right now you have to have the CPT or the CEP before you can do the HPS? Is there a possibility that I can just challenge the HPS without having those two things?
Yeah, you don't need it. One thing that you do have to do is the online modules. So we have this open to anybody, whether you're a CSEP member or not. If you're a CSEP member, so if you're a CEP and you have been a CEP for some time, you were grandfathered into the high performance specialization. Okay. If you are a CPT, then you can challenge the exam. If you're not a CSEP member, you can also do it. You just have to go through and take the modules. And this is just our way of quality assurance. So whether you have all the knowledge or not, that's great. But we know that our CPTs and we know that our CEPs have that base foundation. So that's why they can challenge the exam. Other people out there we don't know. So of course there has to be education around it. So I should probably clarify, if you haven't done education in sports science, then no, you can't challenge it. However, if you're not a CSEP member, but you have that education.
Is that new? Because I had looked into it previously and they said that I needed to have one of those designations.
Yeah, we adapted about 4 months ago, I think.
Sweet. Okay. Thanks for the
Dave?
response.
Dave, you're going to follow up?
CSEP has always been mostly, obviously, Canadian centered, but I know that CSEP is now trying to make connections with the Australian groups and the UK groups. For this certification or any of the CSEP certifications, are they trying to make it more international in breadth? Because of course with the NSCA, which is American, it's very international, but CSEP has always been kind of home based. And is there any attempt to get CSEP to be more internationally recognized?
Well, if I have any say in the matter, yes. Yeah, it's something that we have started to work on. As you said, we're building some connections with ESSA and other organizations. Things, like I said, got slowed down a little bit with COVID. We put a lot of effort into 5 members in saying that, yeah, that is on the agenda to look at. How that plays out, I'm not sure, but hopefully it will be in the future. I think that's an important step.
Any other general questions? I don't see any hands up. Any hands? Raise your hand if you want.
I got one.
Kathy has a question.
Throw it in there, Chris.
Can you explain the rationale behind grandfathering in? Because I was a PFLC that got grandfathered into CEP, and I'm just curious why I should deserve an HPS without doing anything.
Yeah, because technically you would have had that high performance information when you took your PFLCA. I also took it and got grandfathered in, and yes, all of that content was in there. Of course, it's adapted. We also recognize that you're a professional, that you have to update your credentials, you have to update your knowledge base to be able to get insurance again every year. So we trust that you do update yourself. If you don't feel like you have that knowledge anymore, then I would recommend that you take it.
So I guess my thank you, that makes sense. My comment, and this is for all the people representing all the certification bodies on here, there's definitely a big differentiation, and we need to talk about this between hands-on practical skills and knowledge. Knowledge is just one piece of the equation, and as someone who's been in high performance sport for 15 years, I think it's actually a very small piece of the equation. Now, given COVID times, this is going to be a very big challenge. So I think it's a discussion, Trev, at some point we need to have, because that would be my qualm with all this. Like, to get my PFLC, I had to run a TISO tank by myself with Ronnie Jamnick, which is no easy feat. Like, you actually had to have hands-on skills, but anything that's just pure written to me doesn't do our industry justice, in my opinion. And that's just a comment I'm going to leave out there.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. And, which is why we make it so if you're a CEP or a CPT, already gone through extensive theory and practical testing, and making it more verbose, for those that aren't, but have done some exercise science through schooling, which provides some practical placement, practical knowledge, and then they would have to do the modules. To do a practical test for this, at this time we felt was, and not necessary for most of the people that would be taking it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, is there any other hands up? I don't see any other hands. No, I don't see any.
I think Adam's had his hand up for a while, actually.
Adam, I'm not seeing, maybe just saying, okay, Adam.
I see him waving in the background.
I guess my question was similar to Chappie. Like, I guess my main question is, what's the end game here, and how is it going to help the profession? I'm somebody that I had my CSEP, but I let it lapse because it wasn't providing me anything for my career. I spent time in the professional league, 9 years in the university setting. Now I work in the private, and I got sick of paying $300 a year. So I guess the question is, for an established professional, what is this going to give me if I get this that I don't already have based off reputation and experience?
Well, I think that's a little bit of a decision that you have to make. When you become a CSEP member, the insurance is a big part of why people get it. So having that coverage every year to be able to, another reason why we wanted the high performance specialization, so that there was more knowledge for doing with an athlete or an occupational. The insurance is a big one. We're constantly adapting, we're growing. We have recognized there is a necessity for us to grow. We do very much, want to differentiate ourselves from the quick and easy certifications that are out there, because we are so evidence-based and because we do have to have the formal education. Like I said, for most of the members that get it, is that big insurance, the amount that you get in regards to practicing. I think the education is really good. I think the certifications have been built well. I think the specialization has been built really well. I think that additional knowledge is awesome. Is it for everybody? Maybe not. And if you're working at somewhere that has all this insurance, maybe it's not for you. I think that it has, that there's a lot of opportunity by taking certification, and we're going to have more and more coming out in regards to specialization. That as well.
Okay, so then my follow-up to that would be, because this high performance one is new, do you have to start from scratch? I know in Jordan's question, you said you could challenge it without doing all the other stuff, but you still need to take the modules. Is there, like, you grandfathered everybody who was a current CEP in, but for, what's the process? You just start from scratch if you're out because CEP wasn't providing you anything in the high performance world? Is it just basically your pathway back in is what Jordan had described?
Yeah, well, you have two pathways. You could apply to,
I'm sorry, Kate, we didn't catch any of that. You can apply to what? You keep fading in and out. You may have to call in on the phone number later, but you can apply through what mechanism again?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
It's up and down. It's fading in and out, fades in, fades out.
I just taught a class and it seemed okay, so
yeah.
Yeah. Just let me know if it fades out again then, Trevor.
Okay, we'll do.
So again, Adam, you could apply to recertify and do it that way, or you can do the 40-hour modules online and get your high performance specialization. You guys hear that?
Yeah, we heard that one. Yeah, any other general questions?
I'm trying to make it quicker now.
Yeah, that's good. Nice. Yeah. Any other general questions? Because we still got to deal with two other certs, right? So, Kate, hang on the line there. We're going to talk about some other ones. I guess my big thing, the take home from the CSEP is that you're trying to move to be the gold standard. You're trying to say this is a credential every university should look for when hiring a strength conditioning professional. But as the feedback you got from everybody is that really the credential doesn't tell any university a person's ability to do the job. So you'd have to rely on reputation, experience, other kind of learning in order to convince people you're doing that job. So I think our concern is that, okay, we've been in the business for a long time. Most people on this call are far more experienced than anybody that was involved in some of the planning of this credential. Yet, we're going to have to go through these processes and pay these fees just so that we can say we're CSEP certified, when in reality it may not actually add to any element of our knowledge in any way. So I'm not sure if you have any last minute pitch to say, hey, guys, come on board. This is what you should be doing. We want to make CSEP the leader, when now we're going to talk about 2 or 3 other credentials.
Yeah, I don't think the goal was to go beyond some of those other credentials. The goal was to assist members that are out there that could not prescribe or have it in their scope of practice to train athletes and occupational athletes. So the CPT, it was not in the scope, and these are some of the individuals that are working hand in hand with individuals like yourself to train athletes and that type of thing. So we wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to get the same knowledge as what was then the CPT for us. I'm not going to talk about any other credential. I think all of their credentials are wonderful. Again, I think having these credentials is great. And you guys are in a little different world because credentials is a big thing for you. There's also a huge population in the world that credential in the fitness industry, credentials aren't number one, right? And I think that's where we're really trying to get into. We want to see more and more people get their certification in some way. So there's some formal education around exercise training, whether that's exercise and health, and whether that's sport performance or not. In the end, will you get something from it? I don't know your education. I know that the CSCS is really good. Yeah, it's a decision you have to make. Money that you have to spend if you want to be part of the CSEP certification as a Canadian. That's an to help build on the certification and even be able to add your input sometime and be part of some of the committees that are developing specialization.
And that's a great segue because you mentioned that certifications are important in our industry, and in a way it is. But the reason we're having this discussion right now is that in reality, there's not a lot of really good certifications available in Canada. There aren't.
Well, I would have to disagree because I do think the certified personal trainer and the clinical exercise physiology are excellent.
Yeah, but the reality is someone who came out as a certified personal trainer and did your 70-question exam wouldn't be qualified to work as a lead strength conditioning coach in any setting. So that's
not as a CPT. As they go through their high performance specialization, there is an area for them to work in.
And I would challenge that as well, and I suspect that people would challenge it.
It is an exam, and they also have to go through a practical exam as well. So it's not just a written exam for their CPT.
Yeah.
And CEP is
so again, I'm telling you, as someone who's been in the industry for over 30 years, and you'll have on this panel some of the top strength conditioning coaches in Canada, that this would not meet the standard of becoming a lead strength conditioning coach at a major institution.
And again, I don't think that was necessarily the goal of it. The goal was to allow certified personal trainers and people that wanted that more sport and occupational training. There is a ton of people out there that are doing sport and occupational performance. Okay, that there would not be enough strength and conditioning coaches to meet that need. And that's also what we're going for.
Great. So on that segue, so now let's talk to our good friend Adam and Sam about one of its competitors in a way. I guess it's kind of a competitor. So Canadian Sports Institute announced, after they've been talking about this for about 9 years, that they are going to have their own credential, and you're going to need it in order to work in high performance sport. So who wants to go first? Sam or Adam? Tell me what you learned about this, because we didn't get any of the actual people who created it to pop on this call. Who wants to give us a rundown?
Yeah, so I'll just say a bit of the piece, just to also acknowledge anyone that listening that myself or Adam had nothing to do with the creation of this this certification, or whatever they're calling it, looks to be trying to establish a standard for practitioners working within the COPSI network, to be working with national and provincial Olympic and Paralympic programs. I was only able to catch a brief portion of it off of one of the conferences that occurred a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to pass it to Adam, because he works for an NSO currently and is not within the CSI network, which I think can bring a bit of a spin in terms of what that transition period is. And from the sounds of it, it looks like they're only keeping any sort of ability for you to be certified in this manner if you're internal with a CSI network or nominated by your current NSO until 2022. So it seems like quite a long process, and I definitely have lots of questions, as there's two of us from Shop Talk here that worked for a CSI network and NSOs in the past that no longer do. So definitely lots of questions in terms of how that standardization is going to be put across those networks. So I'm going to pass it to Adam to give a bit of an overview, and maybe if he knows the background, kind of where that came from, or some of the transitions of practitioner setup, that'd be great.
Sure, thanks, Sam. Again, same disclaimer as Sam. I have nothing to do with this. I just have been chasing down a lot of information. So because there's no official representation here, we can try to fill in some of those gaps. So the COPSI network and On the Podium have created this, for not knowing what the official title is, and I can find it here, but HPC, High Performance Sports Scientist, or something like that. They basically want to create a Canadian certified sports scientist credential. And they say their central goal of the certification is to develop, attract, and retain exceptional practitioners in Canada. They are targeting this to any IST member. So they're going to have different streams of dietitian, sports psychology, mental performance, strength and conditioning, human performance, physiology. So basically all of the different pillars that make up kind of those, the NSMAC or whatever lexicon they're going by now, all feed into this. So you could be a sport dietitian and have your certified sports scientist designation from On the Podium, similar to you could from you know, a strength and conditioning or sports science, you know, true sports science designation. So really interesting that they're kind of feeding this. There's 3 different levels within it, like a junior, intermediate, and advanced, with different criteria and certifications or experiences needed within each one. Let me just go through some of my notes here that I've taken. So as Sam mentioned, right now, my understanding is it is currently only open to internal COPSI network people, so working at the institutes or the centers. And right now, to get it, all it is an interview. It's an interview with a few of the higher ups within On the Podium Sports Science. And that way, you know, you do your interview and they will decide if you are worthy or deemed enough to get this. And then once they open it up to outside practitioners, I believe their timeline was 2022, those people who got interviewed and were given this certification are the referees and the people doing the interviews, as well as the practical side of things that's required. So certainly as somebody who operates outside of the institutes, but is with a, you know, fairly prominent NSO, that raises a lot of red flags for me, as, you know, someone who, you know, I'm not scared this is going to take my job or my position within that, but I can certainly see that that's what they're trying to do, is create a little bit more strength within the COPSI network to turn around to potentially some of the non-well-funded NSOs and say, you need to work with somebody who has this. Oh, guess what? All of our internal people are the ones that you can choose from. So certainly that raises a lot of red flags for me. Just coming down, so from my notes, so the more general information. So the discipline-specific criterias are biomechanics, engineering, and performance analysis, data science, medicine, so physicians, they want to get this, nutrition and dietetics, physiology, and then psychology. You know, it looks like they are targeting masters and PhD people for a lot of this. That's kind of, oh, and then they have sport therapy and strength and conditioning as I flip the page. So there are 3 different layers within it. They have their HP practitioner, which is the base level, 3+ years high performance experience. HP senior practitioner, which is currently employed or contracted in the Canadian system, engaged in performance research or national initiatives, 12+ years of high performance sport environment. And then the highest one is the HP lead practitioner, which has all of those other ones of currently employed or contracted, 16+ years, but also enrolled in or completed the Canadian HP leadership program or equivalent. So again, funneling stuff to kind of within theirs. I guess that's kind of where I will stop because I don't want to speak outside of what I have learned or known about it, other than, you know, we cannot, if we don't work for a COPSI network, which doesn't look like anybody on here does, some might, we are not eligible for this yet until 2022, as to which we will be interviewed by current COPSI network people to see if we qualify.
Dougie, I'll jump
Now-
in here because, yeah, sorry, Sam, but I'm going to keep going anyways. When I was internal to, so I worked for CSIO, embedded with Athletics Canada, as a lot of you know, and according to this, I was more competent then than I am now, which is, I actually asked that question. It was a staff meeting, but there were several people there. I just kind of asked how we were going to deal with this because, you know, it's public knowledge. For those that don't know, like Adam works for Hockey Canada. Can he continue to work for Hockey Canada? Chaps works for Freestyle Ontario, I think, and a bunch of other people. Can he continue to do that? Is Chaps less competent now than he was when he worked internal? Obviously, that's like a ridiculous rhetorical question, but and the impetus for a lot of it, as I was told by Pierre McCourt, actually, which I trust. Was that OTP wanted to control where their money was going for, where their Schedule A money was going for sports science, sports medicine resources, and they wanted it to be vetted individuals. And I guess inevitably, this is what they came up with. And, you know, similar to you, I have a lot of those same questions because while I was an employee of CSIO, I also got paid, you know, in a roundabout way from CSIO to work with Wrestling Canada. I got paid to work with Triathlon Canada. And those were people that chose me. Not to say they couldn't have chosen anyone else. Like they could have chosen all you guys and all you guys and girls, and it would have been great. But the all of a sudden now I'm not in that pool, and that NSO might say like, yeah, man, I'd love to pay you to do that, but I have to pay somebody else because I'm being told where to spend my funding money. It's quite an interesting situation.
Sam, you were going to say something earlier?
I was really just going to reiterate essentially what Jordan says. I sit in that same boat as he does, right? So just trying to wrap my head around the limitation or the handcuffs maybe that are then put on some of our NSO and PSO, well, NSO in particular, I guess, on those bodies in terms of who they can kind of turn to for support and understanding some sort of standardization that they're trying to create. But that the funding is coming from OTP and that's what it's driven from, which drives some concerns for me.
So
the 4-hour ambiguity of the interview, although I understand the practicality of it because you can sure learn a lot in that 4 hours. It's like a PhD defense. It's taken to the point of their limitations and see where they go. The ambiguity of it just opens you up to a whole list of questions as to favoritism and nepotism and who knows what else isms may go on in those kinds of situations. So I'm wondering how they're guarding themselves from any kind of flashback from people who may be denied the credential following an interview process. It would have to be, being a governmental institution, I'm sure they have to walk pretty carefully with that. Chris, you were going to talk?
yeah, so you know, for everyone out there, I worked in the Canadian Sport Institute for 8 years as an employee. Started at the bottom, worked my way up to head strength coach of an institute. Trev, I think a lot of this was born out of the CSCA, and you were in that original meeting we had at CSI Ontario. And what this OTP thing was there's a group and some individuals that were not happy with the CSCA and what was trying to happen. I think they wanted full control. And now this is my opinion. I'm stating my opinions here. And this ended up being more of a break off in the world that they could control. You know, I do see this as a control play. My personal opinion, I'm in the same boat as Adam. I work for Freestyle Ski Canada directly, and I work outside of the Institute network now. It's almost a form of embezzlement, not directly, but when the funding agency creates ways and they force the individuals they're giving it to, and you say you have to spend your money this way, when this is your tax dollars. Everyone on this call, by the way, all this is your tax dollars. There's so much conflict of interest. I just shake my head at it a little bit. And OTP success is done on counting medals. So really this should be done, if we're going by their model, on how many medals have you won? or ISTs have you been a part of, if we're using their current funding model? Or is it a how much strength you increased, and strength correlates to performance? Like, you know, I'm interested to learn more, because I've been kept out of the loop on this one, because it is only COPC network people. But the other thing I would comment, and I'm disappointed there's no CSI people here. You know, I thought maybe Sheldon would be here. The CSI is a contracting network. Calgary let go of 2 of their top strength coaches because of funding issues. It's an unsustainable model. If the government funding goes away, this whole thing disappears. So there's a very interesting conundrum when you're trying to control something that's contracting. The jobs are becoming less, not more, from what I see. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch, and I'm going to be caught up in it too. So I'm intrigued to see when it lands on my doorstep.
Chappie, I'll jump in here. So similar to your point, so when I asked the question of someone who operates outside but inside the NSOs, they told me that your NSO needs to nominate you, and that's how you can get into their interview / process. But I don't even think that's right now. But my thing is I said, okay, if Hockey Canada nominates me and they make me jump through all these hoops and do these interviews and all these processes and everything, I'm basically probably going to tell them to kick rocks. Like, what are they going to tell? What am I going to get out of it other than someone giving me a rubber stamp check mark or not? Like, just so that we can get Schedule A funding, you know, and maybe that's selfish or my personal bias, but I'm always going to look into it. You know, is it going to further me and help me be better for that NSO? It's not. You know, so, and, you know, the hoops they want you to go through, or, you know, Trevor, this goes back to what you said about the interview bias. So I found in my notes, so there's 6 competencies and their associated elements that they're going to assess you against. So you need to demonstrate evidence of achieving all competencies and associated elements. And there's 5 different levels. So there's the application form, there's references. So you need to put forth references. So I would imagine that's a resume and your NSO, HP, HPD putting you forward. There's the interview, there's a presentation and a case study. So what elements those are, you know, so for me, you know, what are they they're gonna ask me to present on hockey, not hockey. But again, are they gonna tell me that, no, sorry, I'm not qualified, when, you know, I have a PhD, 20+ years doing this, been to 2 Olympics. Is it going to come down to that? As Chappie said, are we going to throw our medal counts on the table and see, you know, who rises to the top? I just don't see how this is going to do much other than pat each other on the back and say we now call ourselves HPCs. I don't know. Sam's getting me fired up with all this, so she's heard this before.
I just busted out laughing like huge. I was on mute, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean.
So who else wants to chime in on this? Anyone else? Obviously, you can, there's so many issues there. It's very clear. Now, maybe I'll simplify and bring it back. Okay, so you have a choice now in Canada between, if you want Canadian specific credential, CSEP, HSP trademarked, or the CSIO in 2022 interview lead practitioner, senior practitioner, or do you just go back to the old CSCS and say, hey, that's what everybody recognizes anyway, right?
Trev, I do have something to add, actually. Well, not directly answering.
Ben, you want to come on? Or Colin, you want to come on?
Am I mute?
One sec. Go ahead, Jordan. Go ahead. I'll follow up.
Jordan, then Colin, or
Quickly, yeah. It's funny because it's such a common way for organizations to deal with things. So I kind of get what they're trying to do. They're trying to get rid of sports making bad decisions with their money and hiring crappy people. Go and get rid of the crappy people. Like, walk up to their face, say, you're crappy. This is why. This is professionally why. We're not going to pay you. If the sport loves you, because there's a lot of components to go into sport performance, right? Maybe they just like hanging out with the guy or girl in the gym, and that's all that matters. That's cool too. But say, you're crappy. This is why you're crappy. Now your sport's going to have to pay to improve you, but you're good to go. Instead, they're trying to do it by exclusion. So they're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist by forcing an Adam Douglas or a Chris Chapman to credential, when who cares? But then what happens is it leaves Jordan Foley, the crappy guy, on the outside, so they can say, these guys are good and we're going to pay them, instead of saying, you're crap and we're not paying you. It's just like, it's almost a commentary on society is really what it is. But just like, address the problem, because I'll tell you what, in my experience, the crappy people, you know what a lot of them have? Time. And they'll go through this process 40 times and prepare, and they'll be the one that has the time to prep the case study, because they probably don't have a job. They're not offended by the amount of work that it has. They're not worried about whether the information that they prep for the case study is their intellectual property or now the property of the person that's interviewing. All of these types of things, the crappy people will do it, and they'll get through it. And then 8 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll be talking about the new one, and it'll be like the super awesome, wicked sports science, sports medicine certification for people that aren't crappy again. Anyways, Douglas, you got me going now. I don't even care about it.
I will tell you, well, that's pretty easy to fire you up, Jordan, but what I would have liked Own the Podium to do, and again, they're not here to defend themselves, but what we did with Hockey Canada, when we wanted to get rid of the bad people who are working with our athletes across the country, on the women's side, we created a gold medal profile. All of the NSOs are asked to create these gold medal profiles. So what Hockey Canada does, which is they took each of the sub-disciplines and said, create your own gold medal profile. And that's what Hockey Canada used to determine if they were going to pay the girls their training allowance or not, because the strength coaches had to meet this criteria. And so there was a group of us, myself, I think Chappie was around when we were creating those, Steve Lidstone, Jeff Osadek. We sat down and said, okay, what's our gold medal profile from strength and conditioning? Well, they needed to have their CSCS, they needed to have hockey experience, they needed to have background in it. Like, we had these specific criteria, and it was very easy for us to say, no, Sam, as a national women's team program, you can't work with Jordan. And it wasn't because we said he was bad, because Sam has a relationship with Jordan and we didn't want the athletes to get mad. We just said, he doesn't meet our gold medal profile. And so you can continue working with him if you have that relationship. You just have to pay out of pocket, but our money is going to go to people we deem on this gold medal profile. And that worked, because it got rid of that, because athletes didn't want to pay out of pocket because training's expensive, obviously, and it allowed us to align with a lot better people and strengthened our strength and conditioning network across the country. Got people like Colin involved. I saw Ben Barame was on here earlier, because they met that criteria. And we could say, well, Sam, go train with Colin. You guys will get along great. And I would prefer that method than saying you can only work with people that have this, because as you said, you cut out good people that way.
And Colin, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so I don't have any experience directly with the CSIs or the centers or anything. I've never worked in those settings, but I'm just going to play devil's advocate here and try to think of a solution, because I think Adam provided a good one there. So Adam, in your kind of follow up there, you mentioned having looking for people who have their CSCS, but somebody who educates students to potentially go write their CSCS to become a strength and conditioning coach. We all know that. I'm not trying to be super negative here, but the CSCS is the same thing you talked about, Trev. It's a written test. You can do it. You can probably do it with your eyes closed, relatively simple, but that is currently the gold standard in our industry. If you look at our hiring committees for a university, it is, you have to have your CSCS. Most people, even in private gyms, some cases won't get strength and conditioning positions, or they'll be personal trainers if they have their CanFit Pro, but they can call themselves strength and conditioning coaches in the private setting if they have their CSCS. So the point being is, Adam, in your solution there, if you have a gold medal profile of people that you're wanting to look to hire, then can't just is the CSCS just your foot in the door? It kind of checks that box, or what is the certification from a CSEP that could be potentially better, at least Canadian content, that could provide us with that foot in the door as well? Or in my line of thinking, when I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I was actually talking with Dale not too long ago, is there tiers to this thing where we are talking about the Canadian Strength and Conditioning Association, but to me, the word high performance certifications withholds a higher level of responsibility, and there needs to be a practical component into that teaching, and there needs to be years of experience associated with that. I think the word strength and condition over the last few years has kind of been watered down, there's going to be certifications for strength and conditioning that just require you to get a basic written test with a basic assess somebody doing a bird dog or something. Point being is, what is the hierarchy of our definitions of sport performance, individuals who work within sport performance in the physical development realm, and then how can we be proactive to determine what the proper certification is for those individuals?
Yeah, I will tell you, CSCS was on there. We also had CSEP as a requirement of kind of one or the other. We just wanted to see some, other level certification, or we had CEP on there. It's taken 30 odd years for the CSCS to be that basic level of understanding. My problem, somebody who hired at universities, assistants and stuff, we did have that CSCS as the base level requirement because it shows competency, and it is very basic. It gets your foot in the door. My problem with some of these, tiered approaches, or, where you have to get X or Y, because it stops the young practitioners from doing a lot of their own thinking and deciding what's good or not as they build their toolbox. And I always come back to the Exos group, athletes performance, AP, whatever. When they were kicking people, kicking their certifications or stuff out, they were creating robots, and you couldn't take those robot students and put them somewhere else. Whereas I know if somebody has a CSCS, they have that minimum level of understanding across the domains of strength and conditioning. And then they are hopefully building their own tools in the toolbox, working out from under people such as everybody on this call, but it gets them that foot in the door, right? I think for the barrier to entry of any other higher level certification when it's surrounding high performance or the sports science or whatever, it's going to be the administrators, right? The administrators need to understand that there is a competency required for director roles or anything, but how do you get there? Like the NSCA call that I was on a month or two ago, they said, well, you get this certification, it's going to help you get those high performance director jobs in pro sport. I'm like, they don't care about that. Like if you look at, somebody works with a lot of, people in the National Hockey League, you look at a lot of those directors, they're either glorified strength coaches or have worked their way up. At no point was the question in their interview asked, are you a sports scientist or do you have your sports science certification? They want to see competency of knowledge and have you worked in hockey, obviously, if you're interviewing for a National Hockey League job. So I guess that's a roundabout way to say, Colin, that CSCS is a foot in the door. It's the entry level thing. And then it's up to the practitioner to continue to grow. So maybe as we learned from Kate, maybe some of the practitioners do want to get their, do their modules and learn about the high performance specialist. Personally, I don't see putting anything else on a job requirement other than CSCS for a very long time.
Yeah, so that's also, for the sake of time, let's move that right into the NSCA discussion, because we all know that CSCS is a minimal standard. Since the CSCS was created, it kind of became watered down. NSCA continued to grow from what used to be a university strength conditioning group to everybody included. And that was great for the organization, gave them a lot of funding, gave them a lot of diversity in applicants and that kind of thing. But they then created the CSCS with distinction. Now they have fellowships, and now they've come out with the sports scientist certification. So Jordan, I think you were the most closely involved, or you got on the phone call about that. So maybe you could refresh everybody and some of the people who aren't here. What does that credential mean? And does it further the CSCS? If you're CSCS plus that, are you somehow better ready to do the jobs that we're being asked to do?
Yeah, there wasn't really much of an answer on that call. I think that's the one that Dougie's talking about. They basically said that, as a strength coach, it would help you move into more of those performance scientist or performance lead type roles. If you were a data scientist or a researcher, it would help you bridge the gap from the more academic side to the applied side, and where everyone meets in the middle, but talking about how it's this upper echelon of a certification. The water was a bit gray kind of surrounding it as far as how to get it, who would get it. And like I said, when we talked about that on the call a few months back, it seemed like if you're eligible to write it this time around, you're going to get it, because it's like possible to grieve the process almost no matter what. One of the things that I think that I like about their approach that doesn't seem to exist with the Copson one that we're talking about is a little bit of potential reverse engineering. So I think that that's where the future of this needs to go. If we want to know what it is to be top level sports scientist, whatever, performance coach, human performance, this, that, and the other thing, whatever we're calling all this at any given time, we need to look at the people, like decide what the metrics are for the best athletes. So by definition, the best hockey team in North America wins the Stanley Cup. So look at, Stanley Cup winning strength and conditioning coaches, what are the commonalities across them? And then, performance directors with those teams, and work backwards from there. And I know that that's not perfect, but if we're talking about our role being affecting sport performance, and, Chaps and Dougie brought up medals and all that kind of thing, is we need to look at the commonalities of the people that are at that level and reverse engineer the certification, instead of saying, this is the framework that we think is progressive in nature, so that you always know more and more and more. Therefore, you are better and better and better at your job. We obviously know that not to be true.
I was on that call with Jordan, as we mentioned. The thing that I really liked about the NSCA one was a lot of people were pushing for there to be a research element to it, and writing articles for journals, whether they're NSCA journals or not, because there are a lot of people on that call that were saying, if you're going to use the sports scientist name, scientist comes with a lot of other things related to it. And so we need to be pushing science forward, whether that's applied research, whether that's research papers. You can write for the strength and conditioning journal, like opinion articles, as long as it's backed in, grounded in review articles and stuff. So I really liked that. I thought that would differentiate it a lot. I thought that was great. The one thing that I get hung up on is the whole goal of, it's this generalist versus specialist. So for me, my background is load management, wearable data, wearable technology. What if I don't do well on the force plate section of the exam? Are they going to fail me and tell me I can't call myself a sports scientist? How are they going to discern that? And I get it. You got to meet, certain markers and everything like that. But, who are they to say that, I didn't meet the requirement of my force plate knowledge to call myself a sports scientist, when that's what I'm already doing, So that's my big thing is, sports scientists at the sports science at the highest level, people usually have their area of specialty, and that's what defines them as a sports scientist. But now they want them to be these master generalists and water things down. I don't know. Those are my 2 points on kind of what I watched and took away.
Yeah, when in reality, Dougie, you would hire somebody that's good at force plates to work with you if you wanted to use them, you know, and like easy day, it's good to go.
And the guy who builds the bobsleds, is he a sports scientist? That's the other one, right? So there's so many micro levels you could take that sports scientist to. So, okay, so we have 3 different credentials that are all new in the last year. You've now seen some of the pros and cons of them. The question is, do we need more? So we now have the Canadian Strength Conditioning Association. It's actually gaining momentum. I think we're doing good things. We're trying to, as a team across Canada, mostly Ontario right now, unfortunately, but across Canada, get people at least involved and talking to each other, creating educational pieces through articles, webinars. Hopefully someday we'll be able to have like meetings and things like that. But the big discussion is, how do we prepare people to work in the industry? And Sheridan used to have our human performance training certificate, which worked pretty well in Ontario. A lot of good people came out of that, but that's not going anymore. We've got a series of certifications. None of them really train you. None of them do anything to prepare you to do that. They just test your competency through interviews, multiple choice exam, or a combination. And yet we are in the future going to be responsible for being the voice of strength conditioning in Canada, as well as the leadership to people wanting to become strength conditioning coaches and or build their competency in the industry. So is there any easy answer? Because the last thing I'm seeing right now is that we need another certification.
One thing to think about too at the NSCA by 2030 is they're going, it'll be mandatory to get your undergraduate degree from an accredited institution, which I don't think currently any Canadian schools have the coursework aligned to do so from the last time I had conversations.
Sheridan does. We were credentialed. I let it lapse because it was $500 and I was being cheap. But yes, we have been credentialed. But yeah, I don't know of any other college that is, or university, I should say.
So you guys were previously under their, what did
Do
they?
it, Nate.
Yeah, we were ERP. Yeah,
ERP.
For 5 years, and then it did nothing for us. And I was looking at the list of, there was no other Canadian school that had it, and I was going, okay, well, that's a waste of time.
Well, even with the ERP, it doesn't guarantee that you're part of their new accreditation program. So like it's a clean slate across the board. So like that's one thing. By 2030, if that's the case, then that no longer becomes the Canadian foot in the door, because like it's on my list to have discussions with our new dean of our kinesiology department, but I doubt they're going to invest the amount of money to put the infrastructure in place to hire enough people to create a full strength and conditioning centric certification process. So I mean, we have to figure some answers out for the Canadian system here to make it a feasible pathway, because one thing in working with interns every year on my end, it is quite tough to define the pathway for them, because Adam, to your credit, what we were just talking about is yes, CSCS, and then go earn your stripes and do internships and so on and so forth. And the cream will rise to the top for sure. But it's just going to be an interesting pathway we're going to have to figure out in the next few years. So I don't know what the answer is. But.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so we at NATE have it, NSCA. So our students can challenge their, we have the recognition program.
At which school?
Northern Alberta Institute of Technology.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have strength conditioning curriculum and you have CSCS people who run it?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's the base. That's kind of the base. What I've heard them describe, that's kind of the base that they're looking for. I'm not sure what other depth they want. So yeah, well, that's we got ourselves a situation. 2030, Canadian schools are out of the loop. So do we fall back on CSEP? Do we fall back on CSI? Or is the CSCA going to do it? Or are we going to all just throw our names in the hat and see if people migrate one way or the other? Tell me, just in your honest opinion, I'd like to see a survey either through the chat or just pop on the mic. Should the CSCA approach creating another credential? Up to this point, we've looked at maybe a 2-stage credential, one for an intern level or a trainee, another for like a lead. Those are the 2 levels that we've been discussing. So throw it up there, guys. What's the answer? Maybe. Thanks, Jordan. That's good of you.
Trev, can I muddy the water? You
Yeah.
didn't talk about our kin at all.
Arkin, oh yeah, where the Arkins fit into all this? Yeah, so because it's provincial, it's kind of a weird thing. Where do they fit in? Because Arkins could maybe trump us all in some ways, right?
Well, they have a college. I mean, that's a lot
Mm-hmm.
more than anyone
Yeah,
else
you
can
can
say.
become a subspecialty, just like athletic therapy and podiatry is trying to get into as a subspecialty. Strength conditioning could become subspecialty. Now that's just in Ontario. That's the problem with that.
Okay,
So
I have a
it's-
question before we're done. For the HPS, did you guys do any of that kind of reverse engineering? Like, how did you determine what went into that program? Did you do any job analysis of people that would define themselves, or that you guys as an organization would define as high performance specialists, and then work backwards from there at all? Or was it kind of like most of the curriculum that's out there, just as far as, you know, sequential progressive stuff?
Sorry, Jordan, that was for me, right? I just
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it actually from our members. We didn't necessarily pull industry, but our members kept, especially our CPP, want more for high performance.
So you faded out again. So you're saying that they asked for the credentials, so you created the credentials, basically how it rolled out. And then, so you brought in some people who work in the industry, and they created kind of the learning modules and then the examination. So if you look at the sample questions in learning module, it's like the CSCS first couple chapters of the essentials textbook on a lighter, it's a bit lighter than perhaps the CSCS, right?
Yeah, like I said, we got a lot of, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now it just seems that you start, it's loud, and then it kind of fades off as you keep talking.
Yeah, we got a lot of information from our members just asking for more credentials. A lot to information we got from our membership.
So I've gotten a 1 maybe, 1 yes, and Adam, let's focus on education. Chris, what's your thought?
I have a few thoughts. I'd say if we start at the start, you know, a lot of this stuff requires undergrad degrees. Not all those are equal. You know, having been a sessional lecturer at University of Toronto last year, 2 years ago, I don't know, at some point, I would put those students up against any other student in the country, seeing the curriculum they're getting. They're getting 4 hours of face-to-face coaching with peer assessment on their coaching abilities and skills through all 4 years of undergrad. And I don't know if there's another school that compares to what they're doing there. Now that's been contracted since I've left, but you know, you could go to a school and get 0 coaching skills. So there's this whole dilemma that not all letters behind your name are equal. Another thing we haven't talked about is NCCP, because a lot of us on this call are NCCP weightlifting and or track or sport NCCP. And that's a model that I actually think we probably fit better under, in my humble opinion. What I would like to see, if I'm going to throw out my dream scenario, is, you know, I've kept my CEP because of insurance reasons and scope of practice. And when I went through that, it was very rigorous. I would like to see some kind of merging of what's out there and all come under one roof. I do not think the CSCA should create their own. I think they need to work with these partners to create something. Now, to me, like the level 4 or 5 NCCP might make the most sense because there's all these modules underneath. That model's not without its issues either. But that's what I would like to see, is maybe CSEP and NCCP talk and CSCA, and we're all under one umbrella to create something. We don't need more. If anything, we need to unify and come together, almost like a union. There's not enough jobs, in my opinion, and jobs are contracting. You know, when CSIs are firing people right, left, and center because they don't have funding, or when a senior practitioner leaves and they fill it with a junior PS1 intern role, that's just showing you it's a race to the bottom. You know, on my soapbox here, I wish I was on the last call, because, you know, I might actually tell students to not go into this profession right now. Go into trades, go into something that actually has a future where you can make a decent living without working 80-hour weeks. You know, a lot of us on this call have done the grind to get where we are at a shit ton of sacrifice. And I only see it getting worse for the kids coming up. The UK graduates 10,000 sports science students every year. Where are their jobs? You know, that's why they're all coming over to North America. So I think there's some big questions that our industry really needs to ask. And I don't think more certification is the answer. That's treating the practitioner as the consumer. It's a business to get money from the practitioner, and it's not getting down to the client. So there's my little rant on it and what I would like to see.
Had some great deep thoughts. All right, so we only have about a minute or two. I want to do put up your hand, chop on, 30 seconds. Put in your word. Anybody, 30 seconds. Shout out.
I'll just leave with the comments that I agree with Chaps in terms of throwing certifications don't solve the problem. Like, we know that there's a problem and we have to actually do some decent work, like in the actual heart of what's going on in terms of education and pathway, and it's not as easy as slapping a certification.
Anyone else? 30 seconds. Take home points.
I just want to say thanks for having me. Like, I think you guys are doing great work, and I guess I should call him Chaps. I was going to say Christopher, but I'll say Chaps. I think those were awesome comments, and I do think that CSEP's always been Canadian professionals and organizations to develop more and become more robust as the gold standard.
Great. And thanks for coming on, Kate, and letting us beating on you a bit. Colin, closing words?
No, I think a lot of this comes down to maybe less certifications and more mentorship pathways, apparently, might be the way to do it. So maybe more formalized mentorship pathways might make sense.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that was Sheldon's original vision, was let's just get people out there, get them attached to a mentor, credential them based off the mentor's opinion. But the problem was there aren't mentors everywhere, right? There's only a handful of them around. So that's the next dilemma. But there is something to that.
Yeah, plant the seed and let it grow.
Last chance. Anybody else? See any other hands? So many people we didn't hear from today. So quiet. Jordan's quiet. Heather, Darren. That's all right. We'll get you guys next time. All right. So that was a great little session. Came out, as always, with more questions than answers, but it was nice seeing your pretty faces all again. And feel free to shoot us any topics. We're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants here, but seems to be some people that are interested in what we're talking about. So we might see you before Christmas. Enjoy the rest of your month.